to a new episode of Mostly Wrong Opinions. I am Tyrone. That's Devin.
What's going on?
Like I said, the gas. I had some cheesy chicken parmesan type of stuff just a minute ago. And, I was hungry. But okay, we'll talk about my food appetite later.
Okay, so if we hear a noise or a fart, that's you. Got it. All right.
It's gone, boy. It's like in the wind. Literally. Well, we got up first on the chopping block of today's episode is a Steven Soderbergh movie that is on HBO Max right now. It is starring Don Cheadle and a whole bunch of other people. It is No Sudden Move.
We're sending a man that works in an office to pick something up. You are part of a babysitting team watching his family while he does it.
Good morning.
Everything is normal, except...
What do you want?
Is that something you'd say? Normal Monday?
I'm gonna shoot you right now.
This film, it confused me. And I'm just gonna be honest with you guys. Did I enjoy this movie? Certain parts. And the parts that I enjoyed was anytime Don Cheadle was on screen.
Well, Don Cheadle is the main character, so that's the bulk of it.
Exactly. That's the bulk of it. And everyone else around him the dialogue seems to be very confusing, and it seems like it's written to confuse you. And so many other characters is put involved around this this scheme and this crime that's happening in Detroit.
There's a lot of like double crosses and people working for this guy.
Crosses.
Yeah, exactly. This guy's actually working for this guy, but you don't realize that guy's working for that guy, and you're like, what? Huh? Who? Huh? I think it's kind of like a heist film, or it's supposed to be kind of like a heist film, or at least this seems to be like the aftermath of a heist film, because before this film, this thing takes place in 1954, it would appear that somebody in organized crime, I'm gonna call them the white crime people, because there's multiple crime people. There's like a white crime boss and a black crime boss. I'm gonna call it the white crime boss. The white crime boss stole some plans for, I'm just going to tell you because I don't care if you don't like spoilers, you can leave. It stole the plans for the catalytic converter, and they got it. I guess they're going to hold it for ransom. I don't know. I don't remember it. All I know is they got it, and some rich people who worked for the car people were upset. They wanted it back, and Don Cheadle used to work for the black crime family, and he seems to be trying to get into their good graces, so he agreed to do this whole scheme to somehow get back these plans for the catalytic converter. I think that's like a general overview of the film, but you know what? Like you said, it's confusing, and I'm not even sure.
Exactly, and they had double crossing and triple crossing in this film. It's just ridiculous, man.
There is a secret cameo by Matt Damon who pops up later in the film, and he has this line about how he can't understand the workings of God because he didn't make those workings. He doesn't really understand them.
You do not make rules, ever. You follow them. Even when you think you have autonomy, even when you think you have control, that is an illusion. You are under the illusion of control at all times. This is fact. It is a fact you will never understand, and you will go to the grave not understanding. The same way I will go to the grave not understanding the genius of God's magnificent universe because I did not create it.
And I think by saying that is him saying that, like, there are bigger plans at play here. Maybe you think if you're part of the mob, maybe you think you're the big guy, maybe you think you know all the little things, all the little details, but you don't. You just know your little spot, but somewhere there's someone bigger than you pulling the strings, right? So ultimately, it turns out that both these crime families are being played against one another, but also the crime families are also playing against the people that we see that are in their crime family too. So you're like, what's the ultimate end game? We don't. It's hard to really tell until the very, very end of the film what the ultimate end game is. So like you said, the film gets kind of confusing where you're like, okay, so these two guys are part of the same crime family, so they're loyal to each other. Oh wait, no. Okay, so these two guys, they're part of the same crime family, so they're loyal to each other. No. Okay. So all right, well these are the police. No one's gonna like them. Wait, nope. No.
Bro, I knew that this film was taking a different turn when in the house. I'm not gonna spoil it, but I'm gonna spoil it. Whatever. The three guys. Okay, there's Benicio del Toro, his character, Don Cheadle's character, and Kieran Culkin. Okay.
Fuller, go easy on the Pepsi.
They were sent on this job to get this thing that they didn't know that turned out to be that Cadillac converter information. Kieran Culkin was he was like a rat within the whole thing. And he
He was given an extra set of instructions. Right.
Get the extra set of instructions, which is to kill both of them, kill the family, and get out of there, and take the thing to the big boss and collect more money.
Right. So David Harbour was like, I guess he's like a finance guy.
He's an accountant. Yeah.
He's like an accountant or something, and he works for some car manufacturing plant, and he knows that his boss has these plans in the safe. He doesn't know what the plans are. He doesn't really care what the plans are, but he has access to his boss's safe, or he knows someone who has access to his boss's safe, which is his boss's secretary, who he's also having an affair with. And it's like, what? It's so convoluted. And so like he ends up having to steal the plans from the safe, but the plans aren't really there. And you're like, what in the heck? But we also learned that Don Cheadle and Benicio del Toro and clearly Kieran Culkin are like three of the worst mobsters ever. Yeah. And they seem to be wildly inept. And we learn later that that's why they were chosen, because they were all going to get killed anyway, right? All of them had like an issue in the past, which they hadn't squared up with their own mob, and so I guess the mob was going to square it up for them and have them killed. But the thing about the film is when you've got so many double crosses and triple crosses, at some point you learn, as an audience, you learn not to trust anybody or anything. Yeah. So anytime someone says something, there's no weight to it, because you're like, whatever, I know you're lying, and I don't know what your end game is yet, so I'm just gonna wait this out. So what ends up happening is you just end up kind of bored,
which also makes you not care about any of the characters, because you know that by the end, majority of these characters are gonna be dead, and it's not gonna be not gonna be a surprise. You can be like, oh, okay, saw that coming. I saw that coming from a mile away.
Yeah, whoever wrote this, it was real convoluted, and Steven Soderbergh, he really couldn't, to me, put it together in a way that was all that interesting. Because, like you said, I could feel the stakes initially, like that when they were first in the house. I was like, oh, this is a tense little moment. But then all the double crossing started, and you're like, oh, so none of that. I see. Everybody's playing each other. I don't understand where anybody is placed on in the story. It's kind of like, I don't even play chess, but it's kind of like in chess, or just any board game. You got to know where the pieces are, right? And I feel like I didn't know where anybody was standing. I didn't know who was on whose side, what was on what. So I feel like I didn't understand the rules. For me, it wasn't entertaining. It wasn't boring, but I was not invested.
Yeah, you're not invested. You were not engaged. I wasn't on the edge of my seat. It wasn't a thrill ride, the way that, of course, most of these trailers sell these movies as.
And it's interesting what you said about the deaths come and you're not like shocked. Do you remember when in The Place Beyond the Pines?
Yes.
When the big death comes in The Place Beyond the Pines, you're like, what? Because you felt you felt really invested in that character, right? Yeah. And you wanted more for him. And you could tell that he was trying to make his life better, and so for it to be cut off so abruptly, it really hurt. But for this film, you're just like, oh, okay, that guy's double crossing this guy. I don't understand anybody wants what they're doing. So you just waiting it out.
Speaking of Place Beyond the Pines, I'm about to put my stepdad on blast, because I asked him what he thought about that movie, and he was like, I don't know, too much drama. That's the point.
Too much drama. That's the point. Also, this movie has some big themes going on in it that it glosses over. So there are some big themes like the destruction of Detroit, the destruction of the environment with pollution,
the destruction of black neighborhoods,
police, exactly. I was getting there. Police brutality and police corruption. Like you said, the destruction of black neighborhoods and the influence that black gangs and the black mob has on black neighborhoods. It had things to do with like race, like tension between the races. And all these things, it just kind of like glances over. It just kind of glosses right over.
That we said is right here, and what the writer wanted was a caper film. didn't happen.
Yeah, and you're like, what? Yeah. So if this were like a I don't know some kind of food or a meal, right? I can see some ingredients in here that I like. I'm like, oh, okay, but you need like a gajillion times more. So some of these ingredients I liked, but altogether it was a little bit of a bland, sloppy mess. In my opinion, which sucks because, like you said earlier, this cast is awesome. The director has done better things. So, we didn't mention. We didn't mention how this film is shot. It's got this weird lens on the camera where the corners are distorted.
Yeah.
And everything in the center is clear, but the corners are distorted. Mm-hmm. And that shit was weird and distracting. I was like, what am I looking at? I couldn't understand what the director was trying to have me see or understand by that. Because the sides of the frame are distorted, but then they'll put all the actors in the corner. And so
it's not just that.
The only thing that's clear is like it's like a speck on the floor or like the corner of a bed is clear, while Don Cheadle and Benicio del Toro, like their faces are warped. I'm like, what is that?
Yeah, it was another thing. It was another part where I noticed something like that where David Harbour's son, he walked outside and after he's been questioned by the cops about what happened in the house with the robbery, and he talks to John Hamm's character. He's the cop in this film. And that scene right there, the camera is at a downward angle looking up from the point of view of his son to John Hamm's character, and you can see all the trees in the back as it looks like pixelated. Looks pixelated, fuzzy.
Yeah, and there's shots. There's these tracking shots where Don Cheadle's walking, and then like the background's like it's like warped, and I'm like, what? It felt kind of amateurish. So imagine my surprise when I saw it. But that's not the editor. That's your DP and your director who chose that lens. So I was surprised that
it's still his fault either way.
David Soderbergh. It's still his fault. Yeah. It was Steven Soderbergh did that. I was like, that's a weird choice.
And I hate saying this because it's not a jab straight to streaming services or something like that. But a lot of these movies are going straight to streamings because these executives know that it cannot, not just because of the pandemic, but it can't make the bank in the theater. So there's like, well, try and see what it is where people just be able to subscribe to the subscription, just press play and see what it'll do for the streaming numbers. Because this movie did not come out in the theaters. It was straight to HBO Max.
Well, those executives are right because I saw the talent. I was like, oh, Steven Soderbergh. I saw Benicio del Toro. I'm like, I saw Don Cheadle. I'm like, oh, okay, this can't be too bad. I saw the trailer, which looked kind of funny with everybody wearing those strange masks. I'm like, okay, this doesn't look so bad. But when I watched it, I could have been doing something else,
So I'm going to give my rating on this film. This film, the only thing that saved it, I liked Don Cheadle's voice. His voice in this movie was fun. And he's like, what is that supposed to mean? He's like, I don't know. Go ahead and stand right there. Get your big ass over there in the corner. So I liked it. But other than that, I have to give this movie like a 2.5, man.
All right. So you gave it a 2.5, and I don't think I can give it a 2.5, but I had a hard time watching it. I didn't like the way it was shot. I wasn't wild about the script or the film, and I was completely uninvested. But like you said, the actors were really good, and I did enjoy seeing Don Cheadle and Benicio del Toro on screen, and actually I enjoyed seeing Brendan Fraser on screen too. But I did not really enjoy this film. So while I can't give it a 2, I think I'm gonna give this movie a 4. I wasn't wild about this movie. I don't really recommend it. There's a gajillion other movies you can watch. There's a gajillion other Don Cheadle movies you can watch. There's a gajillion other Benicio del Toro movies you can watch. There's a gajillion Steven Soderbergh films you can watch. There's no reason to waste. There's a gajillion other mob movies you can watch. You can skip this one. Safe, no problem.
Shoot, go watch The Mummy with Brendan Fraser, man.
Yeah, this is better than this. Yeah.
But that is our review for No Sudden Move.
Why are you doing this, man?
Because I'm going to get what's mine.
Next up on the chopping block is another HBO Max film, and this was actually in the theaters too. It is starring Hugh Jackman and is reminiscent. Say it for me.
Reminiscence.
Yes, reminiscence.
We're closed.
I know, I'm sorry it's late.
We have time for one more job.
This film is another film that did not impress me very well. The undertone of this film, the story that's underneath this film, just like No Sudden Move, it was way more. They could have built a movie with that. This movie has a premise that after a war, the world was being submerged in seawater. Okay. And then,
right, I'm assuming the seawater is because of global warming.
Global warming, and they also had like these. Of course, the rich people was in the middle, and they pushed all the poor people out. And they had all the greenery and stuff. They took up the land and stuff like that. And I would love to see a movie that had focused on that type of thing instead of this whole thing of I'm gonna say it, love at first sight.
Yeah, I totally agree with you that the setting of the film was about a gajillion times more interesting than the actual film, because this film actually has like a lot of like backstory going on here. You're right, this movie is essentially a love story, but it's set in a world that's like ours, but it's like in the future. Now the film doesn't really concern itself with any of this stuff. I feel like we've already spoken more about it than the film has. This is just something that's happening in the background, because the film takes place in Miami, and Miami is completely flooded except for one spot, which is where the rich people live. They live in the dry area, so Miami's been re-divided, and there's been a big war. They call it the Border War. Blah 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 blah. None of this actually matters for the plot, because as you said, this movie is about love at first sight. This is it's a love story dipped in science fiction. Now it's interesting that this director has a background in Westworld. Have you seen it? Yes, Lisa Joy. Have you seen Westworld?
No, like 1 or 2 episodes, and I'm like, okay.
So Westworld, just like this, has a very interesting premise. It's like, for me, I thought the premise of Westworld is like amazing, but the execution, the actual story of every episode is boring. Every episode is boring, and the only thing that keeps you going in Westworld for me is the premise. It's the same thing for this film. The actual story, which we haven't even talked about yet, is so boring. To me, these are the hardest movies to talk about. Because, like, what do you say?
There's nothing to say. There's nothing. They don't give us anything to grab for.
These are just very blah films, right? They're not. Neither one are like bad, right? So there's nothing really to me, for me to like you said, grab onto and either hold it up with joy or slam it down. There's nothing there, right? I'm like, it's just very blah. I'm going to forget about both of these films. I feel like I've already forgotten about Reminiscence. You forgot the title immediately. But
and the whole film is supposed to be about memory.
Exactly. Great segue. Let's talk about what the actual film is about. Hugh Jackman, he works at this company that can access your memories, and apparently he's got a bunch of clients that like to have their memories accessed so they can live through their memories. And one day this beautiful girl comes in, he falls in love, then one day she vanishes, and he's got to figure out why did she go away? I thought we were in love. So there's this whole thing with, it turns out she's not such a nice person, and she was trying to play him for reasons that he initially doesn't understand, but more importantly, he doesn't understand them, and I didn't care. I'm like, whatever, dude. Maybe they're gonna do something really interesting with this Reminiscence software or hardware or whatever. Maybe they do something interesting with that. Not really. It's just a movie about flashbacks, except we all get to see the flashbacks.
Yeah, this girl was a junkie. She was a singer in New Orleans lounge, which is crazy because New Orleans and Miami must be really, really close to where.
Yeah, you're right. The movie bounces back and forth, and they are not that close. But you're right. They do bounce back and forth a lot.
And she's a junkie, and she stole from a gang lord, and it's just, even me going to that to that. It gets more convoluted than that because of different people that is his clients has some connection to her by the end of the movie.
Right.
And
This is some kind of long con, and she's got some of his clients in on it, and yeah, it's again when all these reveals come out, I don't care. I didn't care.
I don't
care. I don't care. So what ends up happening is I'm looking. Yes. Yes. What ends up happening is it's just like a series of images that I'm just watching play out in front of me. And I'm like, all right, there's that. Okay, there's that. Yeah, this is a very wet world.
Yeah. Let me tell you something. Hugh Jackman's character cared more about this film than I did, because he put on some acting here when he really felt like he lost her. And it was like, man, this man is crying with red eyeballs crying. Okay,
yeah.
Snot coming out like Viola Davis crying.
But Viola Davis. The only problem is he did it in a really blah, mediocre film. So if maybe he had a better filmmaker, someone, maybe a better script. I thought some of the directing was okay. Like, things looked cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, some of the directing was fine. I think the problem really was the script, because by the time he got to the red eyeball crying, like you were saying, I had red eyeballs too, because I was trying not to go to sleep. I was bored.
Clear eyes.
Wow. Triple action relief. 3-way relief from Clear Eyes.
Yeah, so this film is pretty. It is pretty. It has great special effects. Like, it's a love story dipped into science fiction, and science fiction films normally has good special effects. Tandy Newton was good in this too, which made me kind of think that she has a thing for Hugh Jackman.
I think that was kind of a side point. Is Hugh Jackman fell in love with, I think her name was May.
Yeah.
Like you said, love at first sight type of deal. And Tandy Newton was like not about it. She was like, no, just kick her out. Because initially May was like, oh, I lost my keys. I can't find it. I guess I have to get naked in your chamber in order to find them. And that's the exact face that Tandy Newton had. And I think the side story was that Tandy Newton loved Hugh Jackman, but Hugh Jackman did not see her for whatever reason. And he didn't appreciate her. So he's pining over this girl who clearly was up to no good and was clearly a junkie, when he had a good woman right there, but he didn't see her. I think that was like a side story that we were supposed to care about her, but that got kind of tacked on at the very end, where you kind of realized that she might have had feelings. And by then, I was already checked out the film.
Exactly, because the way it was written, it's just like the owl in the Tootsie Roll. The world may never know, but until the end.
Like I said, I like the idea of this film. I like the idea of a future that's been flooded by global warming, and the way they did it. And again, all this is in the background. You got to pick it out by looking at the background. The way they did it, you could tell that the sea levels rose slowly, because the city built itself around the rising sea levels, right? It wasn't like everything was just flooded and it's just destruction, right? The city had time to reorganize itself. Yep. And so now instead of traveling by car, you travel by boat. These kind of things. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's pretty clever. That's pretty cool. And the border war, I don't know what that is. I'm assuming that's like the southern border. Maybe there's a war between the U.S. and Mexico. I don't know. I didn't care, and it was in the background, so clearly the film didn't care. But I can think of more interesting plot points for that. But the actual film was dull, and I actually had to pause. I had to stop and come back. I stopped the film. Went to bed, came back.
Anytime that Devin does that, it's probably something that you really don't want to waste your time with.
And that's another bad thing about the film, is you can tell that Lisa Joy, who, like you said, wrote and directed the film, you can tell that she's seen better films, because she's got references to better films. Like, all that stuff is very similar to Chinatown from back in the day. The little tank, the little reminiscence tank, is very similar to Minority Report. Accessing memories and finding out the guilt or innocence of someone, also like Minority Report. They had like a little silly spiral staircase that was kind of like Vertigo. So I'm like, all right, we've got all these references to these better films, but none of them mean anything. They're just kind of like set dressing, and in the film itself, it's nowhere near as good as the films that it's referencing.
Exactly. Because of the undertone story that's underneath here, that's a little bit more interesting. Even though I had to pick at it, like you said, Devin, I knew it was there, and that was interesting. The special effects was very interesting, and then red eyeballs crying Hugh Jackman was good. And Thandie Newton is always a great actress. Yeah, but I'm gonna give this film 3.5.
3.5. Yeah, I didn't really like this film either. I liked all the stuff that the film, very similar to No Sudden Move. I liked all the stuff that the film was not talking about, like all the things that were going on in the background. That was way more interesting than we barely even talked about, like the plot of this film, and there's a reason, because it was dull.
Yeah.
So, like you said, I like the actors, but in a better film they would have been better utilized. But in this film, they come off as kind of bland, just like the film is itself. So my score, I'd have to give this film. I think I'm gonna give this film maybe I'll give it a 3.
You are struggling, man.
I'm struggling.
Ladies and gentlemen, we do this mostly wrong opinion, so we can give our honest opinion, even though it may be wrong. All right. In this case, right. So you don't have to waste time or money. Especially, don't go to the theater for this. If you have HBO Max and you want to see Hugh Jackman, put on a great stage play in his mind, you just HBO Max.
Yeah, like you said, he clearly was sold on whatever Lisa Joy told him, because he was doing his best, but this movie sucked. So I don't really recommend it. I certainly don't recommend going to the theater to go see it. Again, go watch. There's a million other movies that are similar you can go watch. Go watch Minority Report. It's awesome. Watch that. Actually, go watch Chinatown. That's awesome. Go watch that. Go watch Vertigo. That's awesome. Go watch that. Don't bother with this. This is too bland, too boring, not worth your time.
Exactly.
We watch this film so you don't have to.
That's right. So that is our review for Reminiscence. I gave it a 3.5 and Devin gave it a 3.
All you have to do is follow my voice.
So, again, thank you for clicking on this video. My name is Tyrone. That's Devin.
Yes, sir.
And please do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Okay, we come out with videos every Friday at 3 p.m. and always be on the lookout for that. To click on your notification bell so you stay up to date with that. And we're also doing reactions to What If. One more thing, you can leave a like on this video. Just go ahead if you'd like to, the stuff that we said today. But if you didn't like what we said, put a dislike on this thing if you want to. Whatever it is your opinion. But just remember one thing, it is of course mostly wrong. Have a good one.